Hey guys, OGalbina here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys another Showdown movie, this time of my run in the sports summer circuit for 2022. For those of you who don't know what the sports circuit is, I have a little, I was going to say graphic, but it's really just their doc on their information, stuff like that. Sports is typically the Showdown server that a lot of draft leagues, play on because of their multitude of tiers and the customability that it offers. It's really just like kind of like a hub for draft league players and where we play our games opposed to the standard Showdown client. So we can play national decks, or we could play, little cup tiers and things like that, to where they're specifically formulated to the formats that we want. We want to where we can ban Dynamax, things like that. So it's just a nice catch-all place for draft players, and obviously a lot of people use it and a lot of leagues use it. So they have a invitational every winter and summer. Sorry, I almost said fall. That would suck. It's like almost fall already. Every winter and summer, where depending on how well you do in certain leagues that are partnered with sports and things like that in their partner program, you can qualify for this tournament and potentially show your stuff, win some money, and play in the tour. And I qualified for the first one. Funny story, I qualified, and it's top 64, right? And it's all based on this point system, which I'll show you. Qualified. I built for my top 64 game and realized that I built for the wrong team. There's two teams on the dock that both had a Coco, and I kind of just looked at the wrong one. I completely built the wrong team, and I actually didn't do that bad. I only lost 2-0. But my run was cut pretty short in the, the winter run before this. And I think that was actually the first sports circuit. This time we made it, and it was actually really interesting that we made it, because you can see the different tiers of leagues. S, A, all the way down through F, and some of them are going to be able to get you points to qualify for this. I believe you need 8 total in order to qualify. I think it's 8, either 8 or 7 that you need to qualify. And obviously you have leagues like DGBA Speed Boost, LD Masters, OLT, UDL, things like that are going to give you a lot more points and pretty much auto-qualify you for things. And then we have other leagues and things like that. Now, that's the leagues that I played in that were a part of this. I was in OLT Harmony. I was in SBT Conquerors. I think I was in WPS Psycho Boost as well. And I think that's it. Now, last time I made it a little bit more comfortably, but I actually had a pretty bad stretch. I don't know if you guys remember, during this qualification period, where the only league that I actually really did that good in was SBT Conquerors. We made finals for this, not this most recent season, but 2 seasons ago was when it counted for this, right? And you see the dates that it started and ended for. So we made it from that pretty much totally alone, because you get 1 point for qualifying from last time, and then I got, 7 points for being in second place there, which is cool. And then if you win one of these leagues, you auto-qualify. Besides the bottom 2 tiers, you get opportunity to play in the play-ins, which is cool. But yeah, we were able to qualify really with only 1 good performance, which is good, obviously. But when this tour ran around, I was kind of feeling a little bit better as we went. And yeah, we can kind of jump in. I'll show you my team really quick. Now, the way this works is it's top 64. You draft a team with, I think it was 4 different drafting pools with 16 people in each pool. You play 3 games. If you make it to the top 8, though, not only do you redraft your team, but you also, not only do you redraft your team, it's double elimination, and it's all in 1 day, which is pretty crazy. And it's live streamed on Twitch. It's a really cool event. I really like this event. So I remember last year, even when I wasn't obviously super deep into the tournament, I remember watching the live stream of the top 8, and it was really cool. So yeah, I was excited to hopefully give myself a better shot this time. I'll show you my first team. We had 14th pick here in my pool. I think it was pool 1 or pool 2. It doesn't really matter which pool, though, obviously. And again, when we're that low, we're going to grab the best thing on the board. So I grabbed Lottie. I thought Lottie was obviously not only a great Pokemon, but a Pokemon I was incredibly comfortable with using. And in a tour like this, I think it's important to use things that you're comfortable with using, so that you can obviously perform the best that you possibly can. It's probably not the time to try a bunch of craziness. So I grabbed that, and then I grabbed Rillaboom on the way back around, as I just felt it was the next best mod on the board, and I kind of had some plans for other things I wanted to grab a little bit later on, where it doesn't necessarily amazingly pair with Latios. It's not like, a tried and true core of Lottie, Rillaboom. They break for each other so well, but they're both great Pokemon. They both do kind of overload steel types potentially. Maybe a Steel wants to be a little bit more Spadef for Lottie, which means that Rillaboom can go a little bit more crazy, but really that's kind of a niche instance in it, if anything, and a lot of times those Steels can viably check both of them, so we want to get something that does break down those Steels, and I got Heatran. Heatran not only breaks down those steals, but it also switches into them. It switches into Fairy. It's a great partner with Latios. It gives me a reliable stealth rocker, some spread status. It loves the grassy terrain that Rillaboom obviously provides for it, and weakening earthquakes, as well as giving it more passive recovery, as it doesn't have reliable recovery. But leftovers plus protect and grassy terrain is basically a recover on Heatran, and it's going to get back up nice and healthy. So I really like this pick right here. I love me some Heatran, though. I will draft this thing at any opportunity humanly possible. It's one of my favorite support Pokemon. Or, it's not really a support Pokemon. One of my favorite, like, second or third pieces on the team, I guess is a better way of putting it. But I wanted a little bit more offense, obviously. And I went up and grabbed Urshifu Single Strike, which is another Pokemon I'm really comfortable with. Another Pokemon I think is really good with Rillaboom and Latios. It forms a really cool U-turn core with Rillaboom. Rillaboom really bullying those waters, while Urshifu kind of bullies everything else that Rillaboom doesn't like, particularly like Fat Fires or the aforementioned steel types, things like that, and that we can U-turn, kind of put people in the vortex a little bit, maybe get us some hazards and, you know, facilitate that a little nicer, and it also breaks through dark types, which is great for something like Latios, which is obviously really, really nice. So, yeah, I think Urshifu Rapid's going to be a really solid fit on this team. Now, as much as I like this team, and as much as I think that it can really bully down water for things like Rillaboom for the Urshifu, I still want a Scald switch in. And I don't want to designate my Latios to switching into fat waters all the time, because one, it just gets chipped down, especially if I want to be offensive, if I want to be Life Orb, I want to be Specs. I'm not going to want to switch in and take Scalds and Stray Ice Beams and things like that very consistently. So I thought it was really important to get a good water that switched in on those moves very well, and that's obviously going to be Jellicent, which you can see right here. Jellicent does so phenomenally. It gives me a Ghost type. It gives me a Spin Blocker if I really need it, but we're not the most hazard-centric team. I think I have Rocks, and that's it. And keep in mind, this is 8 months, so we only have 8 months in this. But really, really solid support Pokemon. Again, incredibly bulky. I love Stallbreaker Jelly too. It has a surprisingly okay speed tier for how bulky it really is, and taunting slow stuff and really preventing them from, you know, thriving and doing what they want to do is obviously really nice. We can Will-O-Wisp and toxic things and hex things down. We can even Trick Room up if we really feel like it and be like OTR or something like that. So I like Jelly a lot. I think it's a great glue piece, and I think it's really going to serve that role of switching in and being annoying to fat waters really well. And it's a fat water that just can, like, immediately have damage output on other fat waters. A lot of the time, people will rely on just, like, passively chipping down the other water, whereas, like, Energy Ball, it's not the strongest thing, obviously. It's still a base 85 special attack Jellicent, but, like, it's something, you know what I mean? Like, it's a way to immediately pressure some of them, which is nice. Next up, I got one of my favorite Megas, man. I'm so excited to use Mega T-Tar. I needed a Dark type. I needed something to bully down those fat Psychics that wasn't Heatran, so we ended up grabbing, Mega Tyranitar. I love this Pokemon. Not on Sand, because I think if you don't have the option of running Smooth Rock, your Sand team isn't super optimal. I prefer Gigalith on Sand. I also love regular T-Tar on Sand, but it's just expensive. Mega T-Tar is always incredibly cheap. I don't remember exactly where it was in this, what do you call it, in this tour. Let me check, because now I'm curious. Hold on. Now we're going to check. I was like, Draft Pool 2, right? Is that where I am? No, it doesn't matter. So let's go ahead. Gotta cut that out. Okay. So let's check. Mega T-Tar. Again, I always feel like this is great value. At 11 points, which I think is phenomenal. I mean, T-Tar is only 12, but, like, I love me some Mega T-Tar. It's so strong. It's so bulky. It gets up rocks reliably and never dies to any hit. DD and Rock Polish is always a great way of winning. You can go physical and special and mix and things like that. So you have strong attacking stats in both options. You're a little bit slow, and obviously you have the 4 times fighting weakness, but between Jellicent and our Latios, I think we cover that pretty darn well, so. Yeah, that's another thing about Jellicent, is it takes a little bit of pressure off of Latios to check offensive fighting, which is good, as a lot of them get U-turn. But yeah, I think T-Tar is absolutely amazing. I love this Pokemon. And it's really, really fun to use if you use it correctly, especially with, like, terrain support, and oh yeah, it's gonna be fun. Then we got Kang. I needed a bulky normal, and this is the one that I could fit the best with getting the best value out of my last pick, which is a little bit of a weird pick, but we'll talk about it in a second. It gives me a Wish Pasture. It gives me, I believe, a Cleric, right? You get Heal Bell? Okay, Heal Bell. That's crazy. I feel like most early gen mons get Heal Bell, especially like the normals, but honestly, that's completely fine. But yeah, it can be sneakily offensive as well with, like, scrappy sets and things like that to hit not really just everything with its combination of normal stab plus its Gen 1 coverage. So it can do a lot of things really, really cool. And yeah, it's an overall just a really great mon. And lastly, I got Flygon. I needed a ground type. I didn't have one yet, and I didn't realize it till the end. Plus, I wanted a little bit more of a sturdy switch into, like, Edgequake. as Rillaboom really isn't a lot of the time, despite, you know, it setting up the terrain, things like that. Mon's running high horsepower, just coverage in general, it really chips it down, especially in conjunction with Rillaboom. I want to hit banded wood hammers, and I want to use it more offensively. I don't want to be forced to switch in my Rillaboom and be Fizz Def to take on X ground type and things like that. So Flygon's actually a really good option for that. It gives me defog as well to take a little bit of pressure off of Lottie if I need to defog away webs or hazards or spikes or whatever it might be. And then, like, the double dragon offense is always okay. I think as long as one of your dragons can break through steals reliably, I think double dragon's pretty okay. So I'm pretty excited to draft Flygon. I think it's a great mon. And yeah, that being said, I'll be right back with our first game. Alrighty, y'all. Game 1, we are going up against Slap here. You can see he's a pretty terrifying team with the Weavile, Zapdos, Mega Blastoise, Tapu Lele, Snorlax, and Spiritomb. I'll show you the squad that we end up having for this one. So first off, I'd like to point out the Weavile matchup in the chat. It's pretty darn tough. I really don't switch into Weavile very well, but we have a pretty interesting option for it. Zapdos is another Pokemon that I kind of just have to deal with offensively / chip down and get rid of that way, but I do think I have means of doing so. Mega Blastoise also don't switch into very well. Lele is a little bit more manageable, and Lax and Spiritomb are more so just pivots into the rest of my team. I presume it's going to be like a Spadef-ish Lax, as well as like a more Fizdef Spiritomb, because the team he has doesn't deal with an offensive Urshifu Rapid Strike right now. So that's at least my my predictions, I suppose. We could jump into it, though. We got a Choice Scarf Latios. I figured having a Scarfer faster than the Zapdos was incredibly important, as well as a Scarfer faster than the Lele. Because if it is Scarf Lele, I'll see the rest of my team pretty comfortably and be really, really annoying depending on what move it wants to click. We're Draco, Psychic, Trick, and Shadow Ball. Pretty darn simple. If we do find ourselves in a position where we can trick an incoming Snorlax, that's always really nice. But realistically, Draco's pretty darn free. If we can catch the Lele with a Shadow Ball, it's going to do a ton of damage. And Psychic is just pretty darn spammable, especially with the terrain up. If things like Spiritomb don't want to come in and take a Draco, same thing with a Weavile, we can always put ourselves in a good position and just drop a big Draco, or drop a pretty safe Psychic, sorry, and do a lot of damage or something. After that, we have a Spadef Heatran, where Magmastorm, Flash Cannon, Protect, and Toxic. This is going to be our main Lele check. We are Max Spadef just to take those hits as well as humanly possible from that thing. And we are Protect so we can scout choice moves, whether it be Banded Weavile, or Choice Scarf for Band Zapdos, or Choice Lele, things like that. Being able to Protect and not only gain leftovers and grassy terrain back, but also scout and see what my opponent wants to go for is incredibly valuable. We got a Choice Band Rillaboom. This is kind of one, really good in this matchup, offensive. If you look at his team, he doesn't switch into the move Grassy Glide or Woodhammer other than the G-Zapdos, and that's kind of like the whole point of this. If I can force in G-Zap and make it take a Banded Woodhammer for like 80-90%, that's really valuable for the rest of my team because I do have Helmet on the team that can kind of put in range. I actually have double Helmet, so depending on what it wants to click, I can always put myself in a good position that way and get rid of it like that because I don't have great long-term answers to it. So the more chip I force on the Zapdos, the better. In all honesty. So that's kind of one of the main reasons we're banned here, but also it just does really well offensively. Then we have a pretty fun set. We are a very, very defensive, rest-talking, Rocky Helmet Urshifu with Surge and Strike, Drain Punch, Rest, and Sleep Talk. We still have enough speed for the Lele, and we're still decently offensive, and you see it actually still does pretty well offensively, but this is going to be our main Weavile check. We're going to punish it for clicking Triple Axle into a team like this. We're going to punish it for clicking Knockoff onto us, which it's going to get anyways, and we're going to Rest Talk up in its face, hopefully. I don't think he'll have Psycho Cut. I think he's much more likely to have, like, Low Kick to Oko Tyranitar, as well as Heatran if he's, like, a Swords Dance variant, or, you know, just do a lot more damage to my team in general, so I don't think it's going to be Psycho Cut, in all honesty, and I think that this Urshifu could be really, really cool against it. Then we have a pretty Fizdef Jellicent. This is going to be my lead in this game, just because I think G-Zap lead is so darn free into my team. I want to be able to punish that lead and just kind of click Scald against his team. He doesn't appreciate switching into Scald. For Scald, Hex, Taunt, and Recover. Hex is to do a lot of damage to things after we Scald them, whether it be the... Realistically, I guess just the blasters to be able to force some damage on that thing. Obviously, it can Dark Pulse through us and do a lot of damage, but if we burn it the first time, we click Hex the second time, it's not going to appreciate that. We have Taunt, so things like Lax can't set up or rest on us. We honestly just beat Lax 1v1 very easily, and yeah, it's just a great Pokemon overall. Does really well this game in checking the Zapdos as well as peppering down the other team with burns. And then, 6th member was weird. I didn't like Kangaskhan, I didn't like Flygon, and I wasn't super big on this Pokemon, but it was better than the other two in Mega Tyranitar. We're Stone Edge, Ice Punch, Superpower, and Stealth Rock. Just a nice 3 attacks tanking set. We're pretty darn Spadef. I have a decent amount of Fizdef as well. we can live hits from most of the things on his team. Like, we can live an Aura Spear from full from Megastoice, even if it's, you know, modest. We can live. We Vile Low Kick. I don't think we live a Zapdos hit. We live, like, Focus Blast from Lele. And it's a good thing to, one, force out, but also punish the Snorlax for wanting to come in. It's great at getting Sand Residual Chip on everything, and it's a great rocker. It's very reliable at getting them up. And between T-Tar and Jellicent, there's some mind games there with him removing them. So I think that's pretty nice. Alright, that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into the match. Like I said, I am going to be leading off with my Jellicent in this game, as we do see a Zapdos lead, so being able to punish that lead was great. We see that it's also not pads, and that would have been great information to know if it was pads or not right away, right? And we are just going to Scald into the incoming Blastoise slot, and we do get the burn. So this is a perfect, this is the best case scenario for me early in the game. I am going to make a pretty aggressive pivot out into Rillaboom, because I don't really have great pivots into this thing right now. I don't want to go hard T-Tar into Dark Pulse or hard Urshifu just yet, as it's obviously not great for me right now. And I get to exert a little bit more offensive pressure by making this Rillaboom play, and I really don't expect an Ice Beam that immediate from a Slap, especially considering that, like, my water resist is this guy, or Latios, who dies to the Dark Pulse, and it, what do you call it, does, like, 50% with Dark Pulse, so there's no reason for him to predict there, so I felt pretty comfortable going ahead and going into Rillaboom right here, and now from here, I could just throw off a Wood Hammer and do a ridiculous amount of damage. Zapdos is already at 84, you see it takes 71 from this banded Wood Hammer, so it's in range of 2 more helmet hits. We're going to make the pivot into Jellicent on a potential Brave Bird or U-turn, but he makes a good double and goes out into the Blastoise, which is really not a lot of fun. I am going to make the Urshifu pivot. Now, I do want to mention, this is a bit of a dumb play right here, because I make a couple dumb plays right here, because I knew that the Terrain Pulse Blastoise was a possibility in this matchup. Now, I don't think it might have been the optimal set, but it definitely could have come, especially to hit something like an Urshifu super effectively and threaten an Oko on it when terrain is up. Really both terrains, whether it be Psychic or Grassy. So I made this pivot, and again, it really wasn't a good play, because I'm going to go Dark Pulse. I'm going to take 30%, which is a ridiculous amount of damage, right? And then I think from here, I am going to make a double out into Latios, scouting kind of for, what do you call it, the terrain move, but it also could have just clicked Dark Pulse again. It could have clicked Ice Beam on me and done a ridiculous amount, so it really was a weird pivot by my end. I don't exactly know what I was trying to accomplish right there, and I didn't end up getting punished. It wasn't Terrain Pulse, but it could have just very well Ice Beamed me, or what do you call it? Yeah, it could have very well, like, just Ice Beamed into that slot, because it's just not, I don't know. I'm not doing much back, so very weird. But we're going to make the pivot out into our T-Tar next on the Spirit Tomb, as Snorlax is going to double in, expecting potentially like a Draco, or maybe this just kind of shows that this is guaranteed more of a Fizz-Def Spirit Tomb and things like that. But I'm completely fine with this trade, because from here, I can just go ahead and get up my Stealth Rock. And this, again, kind of leads to a little bit of an interesting interaction, because one, I can live an Aura Sphere from full. I know that. He doesn't necessarily know my spread. 2, I can go Jellicent on a Rapid Spin and block that spin and be a nuisance and kind of pivot around him. 3, he can also catch my Jellicent with a Dark Pulse, which is pretty bad for me. Not the worst thing in the world, but keeping up my Rock is honestly more important to me. So what I'm going to elect to do this turn, because my T-Tar isn't for anything in particular right now, and I still feel comfortable switching in and beating that Lax with things like Jellicent, Urshifu, Banded Wood Hammers, Tricks, Toxics, and things like that. I'm actually going to elect to stay in and just go for a Stone Edge right here, because I know I live this Aura Sphere from full, and I know I can punish him trying to go for a Dark Pulse into my Jellicent, which is going to be what he ends up doing. And in conjunction with Burn and Sand and Stone Edge, this Blastoise is incredibly low. I am going to make a little bit of an aggressive pivot on my Jellicent now, because I think he's kind of forced into going for that Aura Sphere. And from here, I know I live a Dark Pulse from full, or at least from 92, so I'm just going to be able to throw off a Recover. Now, I could have died there, obviously, or gotten flinched there, but realistically, that's fine. I could have found a Recover opportunity on the Snorlax, or just sack this thing off to the Zapdos in order to get some Helmet, put myself in a position that way. So, Weavile is going to come out next. It is going to throw off a Knockoff, showing that it is not Choice Banded. Obviously, it's Boots, being able to switch in on those rocks very freely, and from here, I am just going to throw off a Surging Strikes, as there's not a great switch into it, but we find out that the Spirit Tomb is really Fizz-Def and Rocky Helmet, which is really unfortunate, because we're going to take a ton of damage, and that's fine though, because we're just going to go ahead and rest, and we're going to get up back to full. It does go for a Wisp right here, and that's absolutely amazing for me. I'm going to pivot Heatran right here on a Pain Split, which was a good middle ground, being that I just stayed in and saw the Wisp, not going for it again into my Heatran, which would have thrown off a really strong Magma Storm. But now we have our Urshifu back at full. We can rest talk and, still be a nuisance, still check the Weavile. And we know it's not like Choice Band or anything like that, so it makes it a little bit easier to switch into. And, yeah, we were able to eliminate the Blastoise, keep our rocks up for the game. We're in a pretty darn good spot right now. So, Lax is going to switch in, take rocks, magma, and a little bit of chip, showing to be leftovers, and I believe thick fat as well. I'm going to make the pivot out into my Urshifu. We're going to see a high horsepower right here, and I think I am going to go ahead and make a double out into Rillaboom, which seems a bit interesting. But I was really expecting the Spirit Tomb, and while I might not have killed the Spirit Tomb from full, or from there with Woodhammer, depending on his spread and things like that, getting off that guaranteed damage was so good for the rest of my team. I was completely fine with trading Woodhammer damage on that Spirit Tomb and knocking that thing super low for the rest of my squad. But we're actually going to see a Lele pivot here, which was definitely really interesting. If I rolled Surging Strikes there, I could have just done a ridiculous amount of damage to this thing. But realistically, it's fine. I'm going to go into my Heatran right here on a missed Focus Blast, which is really, really unfortunate for my opponent. We are going to see the Snorlax pivot in here, as I believe I throw off just a Flash Cannon. And again, we're slowly peppering this thing down. I believe it showed that Lele was Specs a little bit too, which is definitely really unfortunate because that would have brought me down to 2 at KO range, obviously. Now I had to hit another one, but there wasn't really much of a way for me to get this thing back up to full. As you see the next couple turns play out, I'm going to get back into my Heatran on the Lele. Snorlax is going to come back out, and again, I just have a really, really free Rillaboom. Oh, I was going to say really free Magma Storm, but I actually double Rillaboom here, and from here I can just force a KO. There's not much my opponent can do. We are going to see the Spirit Tomb come in. I believe I just throw off a Grassy Glide. Thank God I didn't Woodhammer, because I think I would have just died to recoil. But because we're only taking Rocky Helmet, we can just 2-hit KO this thing right here. This goes down, which means that Scarf Lottie is looking a lot better, especially with how chipped the Snorlax is. And yeah, we're in a pretty good spot. Also, my Urshifu's attacks are incredibly free. I'm going to make a pretty aggressive pivot here, expecting another Focus Blast to come out from the Lele. I'm going to pivot into my Jellicent. I also don't really need my Jellicent anymore, so I felt pretty comfortable making a pivot like this. And from here, I just throw off a very free Scald. I can try and bait a burn on something. I don't think the Zapdos is going to come in unless it's a sack. Weavile's definitely not going to come in this Lax. We are going to get the burn on, which is great. We get a crit, so I'm going to taunt this next turn because I don't knock him out from there. I already don't know if I knock him out from there guaranteed. But you're going to see we actually do end up knocking him out. So it must have been either a low roll crit or a high roll there from the Scald, and we're going to take it out. Next up, Weavile comes out, and I have no other play just to stay in and sack off my Jellicent. I don't need this Pokemon anymore. I am just going to Scald in this Weavile. Only do 29, but I do get the burn, which is pretty unfortunate for my opponent. Though, again, I will say, I don't think it mattered all too much, because we see that it isn't a, what do you call it, set? What do you call it? A Psycho Cut set, so he didn't OHKO me with that +2 low kick. You see I rolled the Sleep Talk correctly as well, so it put us in a good position to win the game there pretty easily. So we were able to knock out the Weavile, and then the Zapdos is going to come in. Actually died a rock, so it wasn't really at 13. So we're able to take home a nice 5-0 win. Again, a little bit lucky in certain instances in that game. The Focus Blast miss was definitely big, but I don't think the burn on the Weavile really mattered as long as I got the same roll there. And you can't really say, oh, what if you didn't? Because the turns would have played out the exact same, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. That was definitely very, very interesting. Plus, I also had the T-Tar that lived from there, too, because it was burned and it wasn't banded, and I'm at 91, so I could always go into that and just knock out the Weavile with a superpower there. So, I really don't think the burn mattered that much. I know my opponent was pretty upset, which is understandable. It's not fun getting having things like that happen to you, obviously. I think the big one that was really unfortunate was the Lele, because I think he could have forced a lot more offensive progress with that thing if he didn't miss on my Heatran that first time. But, yeah, that is going to be game one. I'll be right back with our second game. Alrighty, so for our second game of the tour, we're going up against Brian. He has a pretty terrifying team here. You see yet another G-Zap. Oh, I did forget to mention, too. This is our second game of the tour, but this is top 16. Because top 32 we played JCM Shadow, or we were supposed to play JCM, and he unfortunately just couldn't make a game and he couldn't play. I don't know what was going on. I think it might have been that he was sick, something I don't know. But unfortunately he couldn't play, which, if you don't remember, JCM's the guy who beat us in SPT Finals, so I'm not too upset with dodging that matchup, I'll be honest. But all jokes aside, we're in top 16 now, and if we win this game, we get to go into top 8 and redraft our team and play for some cash money, which will be a lot of fun. So yeah, we have a pretty tough opponent ahead of us, obviously, though, and Brian, he has a pretty cool team, really fat defensive core with like Clef, Rotom, Heatran, Gastro, Tangela, and then just a really strong, annoying Breaker in Zapdos. And you saw in the first game we played, Zapdos is a bit of an issue for us in the long term, so we got to be very careful about that. Alright, now I can show you my team really quick. You can see we have a DD Megatar. It goes crazy. We are Crunch, Stone Edge, Heavy Slam, and Dragon Dance. The reason we're Heavy Slam as our coverage option is because if it is like an unaware Clef, Heavy Slam just absolutely rocks that thing. It does a ridiculous amount of damage, even at neutral. So we'll be able to do a ton of that, and especially if it's taking a little bit of damage, we'll be able to do a lot of damage. I don't expect it to be unaware, but it could be with like Calm on Lottie, maybe Bulk Up Urshifu, but more so like SD Rillaboom, I guess. But he brought Tangela, so I don't think he's going to be trying, and Clef just gets 2-hit KO by Band anyway, so like it's probably not going to happen. I expect if anything it might be like more Spadef for Lottie, which could even be better for us at +1, which is obviously really, really nice in the long term. Next up though, we have Rillaboom rocking out with the Life Orb, Grass Blade, Wood Hammer, High Horsepower, and Swords Dance. I will not lie to you, I did underprep for the Tangle a little bit. I wish I had Knockoff. I wish I had U-Turn, something like that to facilitate my way out of there. I just didn't really expect it to come with, like, I don't know, mostly just Heatran, but in hindsight, it really kind of needed to come for Rillaboom. Look at this team and look at Rillaboom otherwise. It absolutely rocks it. So I don't know why I like Soul Red, no Tangela, and it's going to kind of make my Rillaboom a little bit more useless in this matchup in particular. We once again have a Rocky Helmet, Jellicent, Scald, Willow, Hex, Recover. Willow plus Hex is going to do a lot of damage to a lot of the things in this team. Scald's going to spread burns as well, and it's going to be a good Zapdos check. It's going to be the main reason. We're not Storm or Water Absorb on this because Gastro can Scald me if it wants. Rotom can Hydro me if it wants. It's not going to do any damage. And I wanted the Curse Body potential for things like Zapdos clicking Brave Bird in case it's like Band or something like that, and it's just Raw 2 that KOs us. We get lucky, get the Curse Body, we still get to Recover off and keep our Jellicent for later, which is great. Next up, though, we also have our Heatran, Lava Plume, Flash Cannon, Earth Power, Stealth Rock. Pretty simple stuff here. It pivots in on things like Clef and Tangela. It gets up rocks. It spreads burns with Lava Plume. I thought about potentially being Toxic instead of Earth Power, but I wanted a way to hit the opposing Tran. I really felt like I needed Flash Cannon for the Clef as well, because the rest of my team is pretty weak to Clef. Like, I don't really beat Clef very well otherwise, so I figured it was important to have that stab option to hit it, and then Lava Plume felt just as important as well to spread burns and things like that. So while I can't, like, poison things, I can chip things down with burn and, you know, stuff like that. And rocks. Next up, we also have a Choice Scarf Urshifu. Pretty simple stuff. We're Surging, Strikes, Close Combat, U-Turn, and Aqua Jet. Aqua Jet was really just because, again, I kind of Soul Red, no Tangela, and even if, like, Tangela does come, and it did, obviously, Ice Punch doesn't really do anything, so I figured the Jet priority could come clutch in an endgame scenario. I don't know, against like a Scarf Zapdos. If it's super chipped because it's been clicking Brave Bird into my Jellicent and things like that, I can maybe pick it off. And again, most of the time I'm probably not even clicking U-Turn with this anyways, so I figured that's honestly completely fine. And then we have a Soul Dew Lottie here, Psychic, Aura, Calm Mind, and Roost. Now, before everybody makes fun of me, somebody said it in the game chat, I think it was Itzy said in the game chat, so why the hell are you Soul Dew? Yeah, I was originally Dragon Move on this as well, and like, when I was originally building with it, I probably should have just been like Twisted Spoon, or maybe even another item in general, but at least I should have just been Twisted Spoon to boost my Psychics. I don't know, it really doesn't matter, I don't think, because like Soul Dew 1x2 or 1.2 and Twisted Spoon. So again, it really doesn't matter which one I went with. It's boosting my Psychic move. Soul Dew looks cooler. I don't know. I had a Dragon move on it originally before you asked, but regardless, I do think that this set does really well, especially if it is maybe a more Fizz Def Clef because it wants to check T-Tar, or I guess Urshifu, but really I guess only T-Tar. But even then, again, Heavy Slam kind of rocks it. But in general, just Calm Mind does really well once you can chip down things like Heatran and Clef. Psychic plus Aura Sphere hits this team incredibly hard, so we just have to be smart at how we position it. We also got to get rid of the Scarf Zapdos, because I definitely expect it to be Scarf in this game in particular. Alrighty, let's go ahead and jump on into it. I am going to lead off with my Urshifu, as I feel like it's a pretty free U-turn out on whatever ends up wanting to lead. If we saw a Zapdos lead, I had a pretty free Jellicent pivot, and again, if we see a Brave Bird, it's going to do a lot, but I'll find out if it's Scarf or Band, and it'll take Brave Bird plus Helmet Recoil, which is great. I'm going to be able to go on my Heatran right here, and I am going to eat up a Leechy, which is a bit annoying. I'm not really going to get much ground on this Tangela, obviously, but I do at the very least get up my Stealth Rock, and a Rotom's going to come hard in, which definitely makes sense, and obviously it can defog, but one, if it defogs, it gives me momentum, and two, if it's not defogged, then my rocks are up to stay. So
I figured rocks are pretty safe early game to just kind of see what he wanted to do. He is going to volt out, so maybe he's not defog, or maybe he just doesn't really think that rocks are that much of an issue. As Clef is going to come out, we are going to see that it doesn't take rocks damage now. It still can be unaware, technically, with, like, boots, but usually when we see that, we're going to kind of assume that it's going to be Magic Guard, especially because my team isn't super hazard stack oriented, like my draft in general, so I would be very surprised to see that, like, a boot set come like to deke me out. But regardless, this gives me my Heatran. It gives me a pretty free Lava Plume. If I could bait a burn in this Rotom, it's really going to be chipped down through the rest of the game. Unfortunately, we do not get it. This turn, I'm going to make a bit of a questionable play. I'm going to stay in and kind of bait for a Lava Plume. I expected a Volt Switch out, and I guess like if I expected a Volt Switch out, Earth Power was probably my play to catch the Heatran coming in afterwards, but Gastron could have very well come in as well, and it honestly might have, and again, baiting a burn on that would have been great, and Volt Switch really wasn't doing much to my pretty fat Heatran. I expected a Volt Switch out on my Lottie coming in, because I haven't shown my Lottie, I haven't shown leftovers or anything like that, and Specs looks really scary into his team, in particular depending on what button I click or something like that, or something getting tricked even, so I figured he might want to volt there. Luckily, we kind of get bailed, and he misses a Hydro Pump, which is great. This turn, I am going to switch out, though, because I'm scared, and I don't want to lose a million on my Heatran, and he does make the Volt Switch play, so he's kind of getting the reads right. Thankfully, we got a little bit lucky last time, as the Clef is going to come in, and this is where kind of things get a little bit tough, as we're going to see a knockoff here from this Clef. Getting rid of my leftovers, and that plus rocks is really going to hamper on the longevity of my Heatran. Just that knockoff alone. And it shows that Clef's utility lies outside of it, you know, walling everything, maybe winning with like a Calm Mind set. Like this Rocks Moonblast knockoff soft boiled set, which is 90% what it is, most likely, is going to be an absolute nuisance for my team to deal with, because nothing on my team wants to get knocked plus Moonblast. Like, just absolutely nothing. So, we're going to be very careful. I am going to go ahead and throw off a Lava Flow in here. Again, not getting the burn, but it's kind of evening out that, Hydro Miss, even then, it's probably less than so doing. So, as we do see a Pain Split come out, I do go Lottie this time, so that's actually great for me. I'm able to keep this thing really low. It really doesn't get that much health back. It's going to lose whatever it got back when it comes back in on rocks. And this does give me my opportunity to potentially roost up, as we are going to see the Heatran double. I'm trying to remember why I made a Heatran double. I must have expected a Clefable to come in, but realistically, I think Roost was my best play. Because I still switch into Clef very well, I can still just get into my Heatran and then go from there. So I don't think I needed to make that double. It looked cool, but like at the end of the day, I didn't get the recover off my Latios. I'm gonna have to make an aggressive play and go into it right here in case this thing is like Earth Power. I don't want to risk a speed tie, as he is going to switch into his Rotom Wash, which I suppose that covered as well. And now I am going to get that Roost off, which is very, very nice. Heatran's going to come back in, again, get a little bit of leftovers. I'm going to make the hard pivot into Urshifu, as we are going to see a Toxic come off. We do dodge it. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter too much, as I don't expect Urshifu to really need to keep a bunch of health, and it's going to be U-turning the whole game. You see, we're going to go ahead and click that again right here. Heatran is going to come back in, but again, the rocks alone are just absolutely boning us right now. We are going to Lava Plume, bring this Rotom down very, very low. Again, no burn, though, nullifying those leftovers, just making this thing a lot tougher to deal with. I am going to stay in on a Pain Split, because I don't want my Lottie to lose a bunch of health and this Rotom to get back up and nice and healthy. And I'm kind of realizing that my Heatran is really losing a lot of its utility. I am going to try and make the Latios play now on a Hydro Pump, expecting that to maybe come out, but he makes a good double Pain Split play. Thankfully, this Rotom is still going to be sub 50 when it comes in, but it's definitely going to be very, very scary for us to deal with. Right here, I am going to go back out into my Heatran, really the last time I can switch it in. Knockoff's going to come. It does 8%, and I do live another Rock Switch in, but at this point, it would just be a sack anyways, and I felt it would be more valuable for me to stay in, sack my Heatran, force the Rotom to attack me, and either stay in and miss a Hydro Pump maybe or something like that, or Volt out and have to come in and take rocks and be at, what, 25? Something like that. So I'm going to go Lottie on this Tangle right here, and I'm going to elect to set up a Calm Mind. And from here, I am going to throw off a big, big Psychic. Just try to do some damage to something coming in. Heatran's going to come in and take 20, and it is going to get Spadef dropped. And this is pretty unfortunate. I actually never calc this, and I want to kind of do it while we're here. Let's see. 204, I think is what we hit, right? Yep, 204 with an Aura Sphere. We did get the Spadef drop on the Heatran, so we're going to calc this. We're going to assume it's specially defensive. No, it couldn't really be specially defensive based on the damage that we did. So we're going to say max HP, right? Because what did it do? It did 28%. Oh yeah, we're just going to say it's max HP. It looks like max HP is about right. So it looks like our Aura Sphere afterwards did end up killing. So the Spadef drop was the big one, not the crit necessarily. It looks like we killed after... Wait, no. So we Psychic. And then it goes down to -1. So actually, I don't even think the Spadef drop mattered then, right? Unless I'm tripping. Because we're at +1. This is basically choice. I mean, we can go like this. Same difference, right? So you can go here. Psychic did about 28. 28 is about a mid-roll there. And then 62 from here. And that's the max HP. So I actually don't think that mattered all too much. It looks pretty bad because, like, Spadef drop into crit. But realistically, looking at the calcs, I don't think that mattered all too much. So we are going to knock out the what do you call it, the Heatran from here. And from here I feel pretty darn comfortable just going for a Psychic. You're gonna see this Clef takes 71% from my Lottie right here, doing a ridiculous amount of damage. We are going to take a big knockoff here and lose our Soul Dew, but that's fine. This thing is still very much so in range, and we are going to knock it out as the Gastrodon is going to elect to come in. I'm going to go ahead and pivot out on a potential Toxic, on an Ice Beam, whatever it may be. Try and get into my Rillaboom, do a little bit of damage, but again, this is kind of the point which I'm wishing I had knockoff, opposed to the SD Woodhammer Glide Set. Again, really sleeping on this Tangela. I'm going to kind of use this as like a chance to like double down and get rid of my Rillaboom, but also do a little bit of chip to this Tangela. And honestly, if it's not Sludge Bomb, we can kind of 1v1 this thing or do a lot of damage back and forth to it. But again, there's no reason it wouldn't be Sludge Bomb in a Rillaboom matchup. But we're going to go ahead and die there, and it's going to allow me to get back into my Lottie, and it's going to allow me to get off a big Psychic on the Gastrodon coming in. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do the most in the world right here, right? And I'm going to pivot hard out into T-Tar. Oh, and that's weak to water. Yes, but this Gastrodon's a little bit more Spadef. And if we can Dragon Dance up right here, we're going to find a really solid opportunity to break through my opponent's team. As I am going to Dragon Dance as another Toxic does come out. I figured a Toxic over Skull will come out because if he doesn't get the burn, he really gets nothing out of that turn. As I am going to go ahead and crunch, do a clean 58%. And right here, I am going to Dragon Dance up again, expecting another recover. It's going to allow me to do way more damage as the Rotom Sack is going to elect to come in, and that's completely fine. The second DD is also going to allow me to outspeed a Galar Zapdos, which is incredibly important. This next turn, I am just going to crunch, knock this guy out, and then the Tangle is going to come in. At this point, I die to Toxic damage plus whatever. No, I don't die to Toxic damage. I still have 1% more, and I figure I might as well go for the Stone Edge crit on this thing, because if not, I can go into my Lottie, maybe force a Calm Mind, and then break through this team with Psychic and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and go for the Stone Edge. We end up getting the crit, though, which I do think mattered for sure. What did we hit on this thing? Again, we're going to run some calcs, because I actually haven't really calced this. 164 Adamant Mega T-Tar. Mega Tyranitar. 164 plus 2 with an Adamant Nature and a Tangela Physical Wall. So it looks like Stone Edge did not kill. Guaranteed. It never killed. Crit obviously did from that range, which is very nice for me. But my idea was just to get off as much chip as humanly possible. But again, that could have obviously not been great for me because Tangela could just regen out. At that point, I just didn't see much of an opportunity for T-Tar to come back in and really do anything. It didn't 2-hit KO Gastro, and it could recover stall me, and Zapdos obviously kills me. So again, I feel bad, but it was my play to go for. You know, I didn't really have, you know, another option to get T-Tar back in. I didn't have Healing Wish in the back or anything like that. So yep, next up, Zapdos is going to come in, and I am just going to very freely throw off a Heavy Slam here. I could have Stone Edge and obviously killed him, but +2 Heavy Slam just absolutely nukes this thing. Let's go ahead and calc it. Zapdos, Galar. Yeah, 91. So it guaranteed kills after rocks, and we're doing it. You know, we're obviously have rocks chip off on it. We're gonna be able to knock it out, and then it's gonna be Gastron against the world. And I won't lie to you, this endgame is a little bit messy. I don't really play it too well. I don't know why I go Urshifu first, as I don't really break through this thing, and it can just PP stall me out of close combat. So you're gonna see I get Toxic right here. I don't get a crit this. I switch out this next turn, and if I was Taunt Jellicent, this would also be great, but I'm not. So I'm gonna go ahead, throw off a burn the Gastron, and then I'm gonna kind of click Hex over and over again, realizing that it doesn't 2-hit KO. I'm gonna go back into Urshifu, You turn out into Jellicent, and again, I'm kind of just like playing this weird back and forth game where I can't really do anything, but then I realize that it's in my best interest to just spam disable over and over and over again, just because keeping this thing as low as possible is great. Then I can go into Lottie, Psychic once, do 43 as it recovers. The next turn, I will be able to Calm Mind, as I believe he throws off another recover. Then from here, provided we don't get crit, we're pretty okay. And even if we did, I think we killed with CC in the back anyways. So Ice Beam doesn't kill us, doesn't crit us, doesn't freeze us, and we're going to be able to neck it up with Psychic. So that was pretty ugly against that that Gastrodon there in the end. I won't lie, that looked really stupid. But at the end of the day, we were able to get the win. Off the back of some pretty fortunate luck. I think the T-Tar crit especially was huge. I don't think the Lottie interaction on Heatran mattered at all, though, personally. So we were able to break through a pretty fat team, and we're going to move on to top 8, which is awesome. We have a full new team, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that. Alrighty, so for top 8, like I said before, we do have to redraft our teams completely. Everybody in the top 8 gets to redraft. You kind of play in a double elim tournament style thing to where we all play, different people in, I guess a 8-person bracket, 4 different matches going on at once. Then if you win, you move into the winner's bracket. If you lose, you go into the loser's bracket. Loser's bracket, if you lose your first game, the next time you lose, you're out. It's double elim. At the top, you have a 2-game elimination potentially, and you can kind of move within the 2 and things like that. So we want to go ahead and start off strong. We want to make sure we grab a good team this time, and we're going to have some familiar faces as well as some brand new things I haven't really tried yet in draft, which is really cool. First off, I got tried and true Mega Gallade. I absolutely love this Pokemon, especially in the format where we ban things like Torntia, Urshifu, Dragapult. This is like a top 3 mon, in my personal opinion. Torntia wasn't banned. But when we banned Urshifu, things like that. I didn't get first pick overall, but I did get a Mega Gallade, and this is a Pokemon I'm very comfortable with. I perform very well with, whether it be an SBT, PGP this season, which I might make a movie on. I haven't decided yet. Our team didn't do good, but I did good, so I don't know. I might. But in leagues like that, I've absolutely loved Mega Gallade, and I think I can pilot it very well. You guys know what it does, though. It's incredibly strong. It's incredibly fast. It's got some fat Spadaf, too, to where fat Gallades can just be an absolute demon and ridiculously hard to deal with, whether it be Bulk Up, Sword Dance, got priority and Shadow Sneak. It can knock off. It even gets, like, X-Scissor for weird psychic types and things like that. Got Axel. It can even Wish if you want to, or some reason, or Will-O-Wisp. It gets Encore, which is another great tool. It's just an amazing Pokemon. Very easy to use. And a great support piece for it, a Pokemon that I have quite literally never used in the Draft League format, is going to be Clefable. I've played it enough to, want to try it on my own. You look at its stats, again, I always say this about Clef, and plenty of people have said it about Clef in the past, where its stats look incredibly underwhelming. Like, ridiculously underwhelming. But for some reason, it lives every hit, it avoids the 2-hit KO, and a lot of that is due to Magic Guard, allowing it to avoid status and hazards and all that good stuff, which is great, but it also has a great tool in Unaware, allowing it to block setup and things like that. Calm Mind sets are great, Cosmic Power sets are great, it can Stealth Rock, Knock Off, it gets other great tools like Wish and Teleport and Encore and cool things like that. It's got the Gen 1 coverage to where it can hit everything super effectively if you really needed to. It's just kind of just a master of all. It's really good at everything it does, and I'm really excited to finally use it. We do get another great pair with Gallade, one of my favorite Pokemon to pair with it, in Greninja next. It gives me great speed, which I think is important to secure really early on in these tours. It gives me a Dark type. It gives me Spikes as well. And Spikes and Rocks plus Mega Gallade is really tough to deal with in a lot of instances, so I think that can be a lot of fun. It's really good offensively in a lot of matchups, whether it be specially, physically, or mixed especially. I think Life Orb sets are great. Spec sets are great. It gets U-Turn, and it can do a lot of really fun things with this nasty speed tier of 122. So it also outspeeds Torn, so having a Pokemon that outspeeds Tornadus, when we, inevitably might play that thing in this bracket, pretty much guaranteed. Or I guess not guaranteed, but it's having something that outspeeds Torn is always really important in my opinion. Okay, next, if outspeeds Anakin, threaten it somewhat. Next up, we have Heatran here. He got to make both teams. It's the GOAT. I love me some Heatran. I talked about him the last time. You know what Heatran does. It sets up rocks. It can be strong. It can be fat. It can be both at the same damn time. It spreads status. It spreads hazards. and it's just a general nuisance. It is very tough to deal with Heatran, and I like it a lot with things like Clef. It also gives me another rocker to where it kind of takes the pressure off of Clef to perform that role and things like that. Getting a good steel type with something like Gallade is really, really important in my opinion, especially with Gren as well. This is a great fairy killer as well, so takes on some of that burden so that Gren and Gallade don't have to worry about those Pokemon as much. It's just, again, one of my absolute favorite Pokemon to draft. Absolute favorite. Okay, next up, we have Seismitoad here. Now, Seismitoad, again, gives me a water, it gives me a ground, and it gives me an incredibly reliable rocker. It is a water that is neutral to ice, which is always a little bit scary, but we do have Heatran as a very solid ice resist, so I'm not as worried with this. I always like getting secondary waters when I get something like Greninja, like an offensive water, to kind of, fill that fat water role for me a little bit better. It can be physical, it can be special, and every time I draft Toad, I always end up bringing a Swift Swim set, at least once. I always end up doing it, so, it'll probably end up coming one of these times, and just be ridiculously strong under weather with Swift Swim, but usually it's going to be really fat. Set of rocks, spread Toxic, spread Scalds. I also really like Assault Vest, like offensive Toad. I think that's another great set, especially with Wish Support from like Clef or something like that. So, very solid. More hazards in Garbodor right here. Obviously, it's really just kind of a spiking machine. It gives me a grounded poison as well in case I am like unaware Clef, or for things like Toad, Gallade, they really don't appreciate those being up. So having a grounded poison is going to be really nice. Another thing to kind of bully down fairies and things like that, which is great. It can boom. It's great if I want to go a more offensive build, but it's also good on defense as well. Like Rocky Helmet, Aftermath sets are really annoying for a lot of physical attackers. Can kind of just check them in virtue of forcing ridiculous amounts of damage on them between Rocky Helmet and Aftermath throughout its lifespan or whatever it may be. And yeah, it's always really well. It has like anti-setup options and haze and things like that. It has coverage to hit the things that poison types usually don't, and like Drain Punch and Stomping Tantrum and things like that. It sets up spikes, it sets up T-spikes. It's just a good lower tier Pokemon, as you all know. Next up, my ground resist, which is really mediocre and unfortunate, but we have Leafeon. It was really the best grass type in the point value in which that I saw. It takes a little bit of pressure off of Clef and being a Wish Passer and a Cleric, which I think is really important to have something else that can do that. So Clef can do whatever it else wants to do, whether it be Calm Mind, Rocks knock 2 attacks, or Rocks knock soft boiled, whatever it wants to be, and things like that. This takes a little bit of pressure off of it, and again, it gives me a ground resist as I quite literally lose to the move Earthquake at the moment. So I have some things to offensive pressure grounds, but I want something to switch into them, being that I have a whole ass Heatran. I think that'd be a good idea. And then I wanted to have a good ghost immunity because my dark type is really frail. So I grabbed Drampa. I'm going to the dark side. I know Kurt just fucked me up with this like a month ago. But I think actually when I drafted this in top 8, it was right after Kurt fucked me up. So maybe it was like subconsciously, because I was like, well, you can't lose to Drampa if you draft him. But it's got decent Spadef, honestly, when invested into, and has great tools like Glare. It's really strong. Berserk's a great ability, so is Sapsipper if we really need it. Even Cloud9 into weather and things like that can be really, really tough for a lot of teams to deal with. It can roost, and again, has great coverage. So I think Drampa has some great value as a low tier Pokemon. I'm hoping that I can make it shine this top 8 here. But yeah, that being said, we can jump into our first game against Arcan. Alrighty, round 1, we are going up against Arcan, and he has a pretty scary team. We can show you right here. It is going to be Zapdos, Weavile, Jirachi, Milotic, Mega Altaria, and Gliscor. Now, his team, it's really scary versus mine in particular. Things like Zapdos offensively are incredible versus me. Gliscor is always annoying, as it usually is. Mega Altaria can get out of hand if I don't have the correct prep for it. Like, Fairy Move plus Earthquake just 6-0s me. Jirachi can be really annoying, but the biggest threat to me is Weavile. I have a -0 Weavile matchup. Banded, Knockoff plus Triple Axle just kind of rips my entire squad, and it is really difficult for me to deal with it, and it's kind of going to be the main hurdle with this matchup here. Is going to be dealing with that Weavile over the course of the game. Alright, so first off, we can start off with our Drampa. I'm clicked on, even though it's the last modern team builder. It is going to be our dedicated lead this game. We are Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Roost, and Hyper Voice with Berserk. It does really well in this game if you look at its coverage. Between Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Roost, and Hyper Voice, we hit this entire team neutrally or super effectively. If we can look at things like Zapdos, Zapdos, Ice Beam, Weavile, Flamethrower, Jirachi, Flamethrower, Hyper Voice for the Milotic, then Ice Beam, Ice Beam. Maybe I could have even been like Thunderbolt. Does it get Thunderbolt? Actually, no, it does. So maybe just like no Stab Trap would have been better. Regardless, this thing, once it starts stacking Berserk boosts from things like Zapdos, from things like Milotic, if it wants to Ice Beam me, from things like Gliscor, it's really difficult to switch in this thing at +1 with all of its coverage. So we're going to do a lot of damage to some things in this matchup here with Drampa, hopefully, and hopefully it'll put on some immediate pressure on my opponent's team to where we can put in some work. Next up, we have our Wincon Mega Gallade. We are Drain Punch, Triple Axle, Bulk Up, and Sub. If you look at the combination of Drain Punch plus Triple Axle, it is incredibly tough for him to deal with it. Drain Punch rocks the middle 3, and then he has 3 flying types that all just get O-code by +1 Triple Axle. I guess Zapdos would need a little bit of chip, but other than that, +1 is really all we need. I know that we're Triple Axle into a Zapdos matchup, but we do have Heal Bell on our next Pokemon, and Clef. We are unaware, Calm Mind. If I can get rid of Jirachi, this set actually just like wins. But regardless, it's very solid in the sense that it heal bells off statics and burns and poisons and things like that. And this team is very status heavy, so I figured heal bell would be a great option. But the real reason we're unaware is this is going to be our Altaria check. We need something to switch into that thing as it starts dragon dancing up, and we'll obviously very easily take it on with the unaware ability, blocking out any boosts and things like that. Next up, we have our Heatran. We're decently offensive. We're Magma, Protect, Flash Cannon, Toxic. Idea is this is going to be our main pivot into the Weavile. If it ever clicks Axle on something like our Gallade or our Drampa or something like that, it is going to take a lot of Rocky Helmet and potentially get Flame Bodied 3 times, which is great. Even knockoffs after the first one, the next banded knockoff after that is not an Oko. Like it's a 3-hit KO with knockoff from full after like full power into 2 weakened ones. We take 2, so that's obviously really nice. Magstorm plus Flash Cannon, Toxic, and Protect is going to be really annoying for them to deal with, whether it be residual from Magstorm, Toxic, or both. So that's obviously great. We have a Spiking Greninja with Dark Pulse, Ice Beam, Spikes, and Taunt. Taunt is for things like maybe a Defog Zapdos or Gliscor, but even then Gliscor we're just going to Ice Beam, but mostly Defog Zapdos. Especially the Milotic, though. If that thing wants to recover in our face, we can always just Taunt it and Dark Pulse it down. If it wants to try and Toxic us, that's another thing. We can always just Taunt and Dark Pulse down, which is great. And also stuff like a Defog Altaria or a Dragon Dance Altaria, or maybe even like a Rock Jirachi if we're feeling extra spicy and we don't think we knock out from full with Dark Pulse, which I don't think we do if it has any kind of bulk at all. Next up, we have our Seismitoad, rocking out with Scald, Stealth Rock, Toxic, and Earth Power. Mixed defenses. We're here to just kind of get up rocks and spread some status, whether it be Scald Burns, Toxic Poisons, and then we can Earth Power things as well. Again, just a good general nuisance in the game. So, with that being said, let me check this Discord ping. Okay, cool. And let's go ahead and jump on into it. With this game, I am, again, going to leave my Drampa, and we see a Weavile. And this was pretty bad for me. I should have kind of recognized that Weavile lead put me immediately in a terrible spot and led something like Gallade or led something like Heatran. Most likely Heatran, because I think Clay can just like raw die to Banded Axle. So that was really unfortunate for your boy. I probably should not have done that, but I am going to be forced out here. I am going to go Heatran on a potential triple Axle, but he makes a good play. Just goes for knockoff. It would have done a ton to everything else anyways. We are going to lose our helmet. It's going to take helmet chip, but no burn there, unfortunately. I am going to go for a Toxic right here, expecting the Milotic to come in. Altaria is going to come in. I miss, which is unfortunate, but you're going to see he's actually going to pivot out this turn anyways, which doesn't really matter which means it wouldn't have mattered if I hit because of natural cure. I go Clef, and then I'm going to go Drampa on the U-turn, and then the Altaria doesn't come in. Thank God he didn't just go Weavile again, because I just sacked a Pokemon. He went Altaria instead, clicked Facade, did not do that much in all honesty, about 32, which is completely fine with me. My Milotic's going to come out. I'm going to double into my Seismitoad because I want my Stealth Rock up. They're incredibly important to chip down this team, especially that Choice Band Weavile. I want to limit it to 2 more switch-ins if I at all possibly can, because I don't have long-term answers for it. And right here, you're going to see like a weird Toxic exchange. I figured he'd want to pivot out after this because he doesn't really have a way of touching me, but it's kind of just wasting time. And again, it's completely fine. I'm going to be able to go into my Clefable right here as a Recover comes off. And then from here, I am just going to go for a Heal Belt as this, what do you call it? My little kind of checks to see if I'm Magic Guard, I suppose, as we are going to Heal Belt off that Poison. I'm going to make a series of pivots from my Heatran. then out into my Greninja on a Scald. Thankfully, we don't get burned, and this next turn, I can go ahead and go for a Taunt. This is one of the reasons I don't think Flame Orb Milotic is very good, because I haven't attacked this thing in like 4 turns, and it's down at 70. It's taunted. It has to come in on rocks now next time it comes in. Like, it's very, very chipped. This next turn, I believe I do just go for a Spike on the Zapdos coming hard in. I'm going to go Drampa in case he wants to throw off a big Hurricane. He doesn't. He goes for a U-turn. Out into Milotic again. Again, showing me that it's probably just going to recover this turn. It has to. It's at 39. So because of that, I am going to make that pivot out into Greninja. And I believe I go for an Ice Beam, expecting the Zapdos to want to come in on a Taunt again, because I didn't think he gained much by clicking Toxic here, but he kind of just, like, got me being over-aggressive. I don't know. I feel pretty confident in the play that I made, and then I Spike out this next turn again, expecting to not want to be taunted, but it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to go into my Clefable right here, because I want to go ahead and heal off that poison on my Gren. It still does do a lot of work in this game. This score's going to come hard out as I do Heal Bell, and I'm going to make the aggressive play of hard Greninja, as I do expect a potential Defog to come out here. And again, I want to Spike at least. He makes a good aggressive switch though, going out into the Weavile, and I'm actually kind of walled by this. I am going to go Heatran, realistically sacking it off, but also realistically trying to bait a Flame Body. He clicked it 3 times and it didn't happen, so I feel like at that point it's kind of close to inner odds at least. I don't know, I feel like it might be at least around 50-ish%. But regardless, you're going to see my Drampa come out here on a Zapdos, get you turned on as Weavile, once again, comes back in. I'm going to elect that Drampa is probably my weakest link at this point, and I am going to need to sack it off here in order to try and do something. Weavile's going to come in, or my Clefable's going to come in, and this is fine, because like I knock out, or this is good because I knock out the Weavile. I barely live that Banded Axle from that Calc. They live guaranteed. And the issue, this Altaria that just came in kind of wins the game, which isn't good. I am gonna go into my Gallade right here and click Triple Axle. Thankfully, it didn't set up. I mean, if it set up though, then I got a soft wall off and it didn't break me anyways. So we're able to knock it out there. I'm gonna play a little cheesy right here. I'm gonna kind of bait for a miss on this Zapdos, really hoping that it ends up missing its Hurricane. It doesn't really have... I guess it could have just Thunderbolted me, though. But I am going to just continuously substitute as there's the Discharge that doesn't miss. And from here, I am just going to go for Triple Axle, really trying to chip this thing down. At this point, my out I see is going to be my Greninja. I'm going to, 1, have to hope that it's not Scarf Rachi, and 2, that I can flinch it maybe once and go from there. So I'm going to go Gren here. I am just going to Dark Force, knock out the Zapdos, and from here, Jirachi's going to come out. I'm going to make the pivot into Seismitoad because, like, I kind of need to, in my opinion. I can't really risk that thing being Scarf and just U-turning out, sacking the Gliscor, and then kind of coming back in and winning. I don't know. I definitely don't think that would have been the best idea. Right here, Drain Punch is going to come out, making me think maybe this is, in fact, a Toxic set. I'm going to make a double, expecting the Milotic to want to come back in, potentially. Then I can taunt it and try and go from there. But we are going to see a Cosmic Power, and this just seals the game. I go for a flinch right here. Unfortunately, I do not get it, and we're going to get Drain Punched into Stored Power and go ahead and lose this one. So, again, unfortunate, but like I said, this isn't the end of the tour for us. It is a double elimination tour. So now we just can't lose anymore at all. It sucks to lose your first game out there, but again, there's still plenty of ways that we can come back and, you know, make a deep run in this tour. So I'll be right back with our next game. Alrighty guys, here we are with the next round of losers, and fourth wall break really quick. I just recorded the entirety of the rest of this video from after the Archon battle. It took like, you know, I took a break. I hadn't recorded this in a while. And recorded the rest of the run. Which was a lot of content. It's whatever now to the end of the video is, probably even shorter, because I'm going to zoom through these because I went through and I was about to start editing the video and I realized I had my mic turned off the entire time. It's 11 p.m. But I don't think I'll record this tomorrow, knowing me. So I'm doing it again right now. So if a little bit of immersion break happens or I'm not as detailed with this one, I apologize. I think my last recording was stellar too, so we'll see what we can do. Regardless, back to it. We have our first, or not our first, our second game of our first game of losers bracket, our second game of the top 16 bracket against Pyronox, who's a very solid player. I forget who he played round 1, but he obviously played someone very good. Because Pyro's obviously a very good player as well. I would consider him much better than me at this point. And I'll probably say that about a couple people in this video. And I don't mean that I'm like a, you know, like I suck. They're really good. Like, I think I'm a good Pokemon player, you know? But I'm definitely punching up. I'm fighting up a weight, like a weight bracket, whatever boxing terms, who knows, UFC terms, whatever. I'm a weight class in this fight. I'm the little guy. So we definitely have our work cut out for us. He has a really scary team with things like Coco, Wishy-Washy, Latios, Moltres, Mega Scizor, and the Meloetta. Something really scary that came, that didn't come but was on the bench and definitely influenced my prep a lot, was a Mamoswine. And if you guys remember, when I showed you guys my team a little bit ago, my ground resist is Leafeon. So already that's one, not a very good ground resist because it's a terrible Pokemon. And it's also terrible in this matchup into things like Scizor and Scizor. But and also Moltres. So Leafeon was already tough enough to justify as a bring, but not only on top of that, it's like against the Mamoswine. So I definitely wasn't bringing a ground resist this game. And I have nothing off the ground either. So Mamoswine was potentially a really, really big issue, and I'm very surprised to see it not come here. I thought like a banded Mamoswine or even like a Scarf Mamoswine could go crazy in this game and really put a lot of pressure on my team, but it didn't come, so that's obviously a good thing for me, but it definitely influenced my prep. You'll see with one set in particular, which I got a little bit of flack for, but I think it was fine. But we have 4 attacks. Mega Gallade just does really well offensively this game. It has coverage for really everything. Triple Axle, Fire Punch, Knockoff, Close Combat, does very solid offensively. With a very, very unaware Clefable, where Calm Mind, Soft Boy, Moonblast, Flamethrower. We're unaware for things like Moltres. As it starts getting Berserk Boost, if it starts Nasty Plotting, whatever it may be, we could take those. Well, as well as Sword Stance Up, Bullet Punches with our Berry, we can always take that and hit it back with a Hard Flamethrower, potentially knocking out depending on where it's at, Calm Mind Lottie, a bunch of different things like that, right? So, unaware Clef, I think it's pretty solid this game. I also don't expect a lot of status from my opponent, and you can see he actually does not have any hazards on this build, so unaware is definitely going to be the bring here. I definitely didn't think Toxic was going to come on any of these Pokemon either, so I am completely fine with being unaware of this game. And as you can see too, once we get to +1 Moonblast plus Flamethrower, just 2 KOs or goes like the whole team. Mine is Wishy-Washy, but getting chip on that is paramount for the rest of my team, which we'll obviously talk about. In particular, the next member in Choice Scarf Heatran, rocking out with Eruption, Earth Power, Explosion, Flamethrower. Now, granted, I didn't really expect Wishy-Washy to come. Now I am prepared for it in the sense that I won't just like auto lose to it when it comes, but what do you call it? I didn't particularly expect it over something like Mamoswine. So the fact that it's here kind of throws a wrench in the Scarf Eruption endgame plans. But regardless, if we get up hazards, which our next member is going to end up having in spikes, and really chip this thing down and just pepper it with different attacks, we can do a lot of damage to it and really chip it down over the course of the game. And from there, we can throw off big eruptions and really take things out. If you look at the back 3 in the first Pokemon on the team, they don't appreciate Scarf Eruption. Even something like Lottie, especially if it's pretty offensive, doesn't appreciate it. We have Boom to hit like a Calm Mind Lottie if it like ends up CMing up and becoming a big nuisance. Now we are timid. I looked at the rolls, they didn't really change all too much, and I didn't want to lose out any bulk in case I did need to pivot on things like Moltres, Coco, Latios, Meloetta, because I can still take hits from those things, as well as Scizor, obviously, though I don't want to take hits from those things. So it's just something to keep in mind, that we do have the Boom option, but we don't necessarily have a move that hits Latios consistently. Next up, we have, again, the set that I kind of got a little flack for. We're Air Balloon Greninja. Now, again, I don't have anything off the ground, so I figured like a Choice Lock Mamoswine was really good against me, and I didn't really want it locking Earthquake for free, to be completely honest. So I brought an Air Balloon Greninja, because I figured I could get an in for free on a Mamoswine clicking a very free Earthquake. And then I could just get up a Spike and really chip down things like Wishy-Washy, Non-Boots Coco, Scizor, Meloetta, all coming in and out, chipping them down in the range of things like Gallade, Heatran, things like that. So I figured that Spikes were obviously going to be very solid. And other than that, are just Dual Stab plus Shuriken, it does really well. Spreading Burns is also great for things like Scizor, as well as Wishy-Washy, even Moltres, just chipping them down. I don't really have much status on this team outside of our next member with Toxic, but Burns are obviously great as well, so I'm never going to turn that down. Next up, we have a Seismitoad. We're pretty much just a mixed defensive, stab, stealth rock, toxic Seismitoad. Very simple stuff. We pivot into Coco, we get up rocks, and we get out of there. Now, I'm accidentally switched him. It doesn't end up coming into play in the battle, thankfully, but best believe I shit myself when I saw I didn't have water immunity against the Wishy-Washy that I really wanted to chip against. And my main pivot into just couldn't pivot into it anymore very well. So, they didn't end up coming into play, but best believe I was terrified. And then next up And lastly, we have Big Drampa, of course, coming back. We're a Calm Mind, pretty offensive set. If you look at Hyper Voice plus Flamethrower at +1, we just 2 kill Oko everything. Minus maybe like an AV Meloetta, but other than that, we just really do a lot of work against a team like this. And we can really bully some things down. Once we start getting boosted up, things like Coco just don't kill us. And once we get a couple up, Latios doesn't either, which is great. And if we could trade 1-for-1 with really anything on this team, Drampa has kind of done its job here. So that's obviously very, very nice here. All right, let's go ahead and jump on into it. I am going to lead off with my Heatran, hoping that we'd see like a Scizor lead, trying to take advantage of like a Clef, Gren, Seismitoad, Drampa lead, just to get a big U-turn off, maybe a knockoff or something like that. But unfortunately, we do see a Wishy-Washy. I am going to pick it out of the toad. As a U-turn comes out, from here, Latios is going to come. I'm going to pivot Clef, and you can see I was pretty mixed defensive, right? Oh my gosh, I wasn't even sharing. See, this is what I mean. See, normally I would restart this video, but tonight it's not happening. So we'll go ahead and start through the things that we were talking about. Heatran, Wishy-Washy, Flip Turn, Clef. Bam. No shot. So you saw that we were pretty mixed defensive, but we weren't spadef enough despite our calm nature. As we do get 2-hit KO by that Psychic, I do expect him to go for it again, though. I think it would be a pretty crazy play. You just go for a Draco right there, as I do get in my Greninja. And this is going to force out the Latios. He doesn't want to take this Dark Pulse whatsoever. So I am going to elect to get up a Spike as the Wishy-Washy does come in. And again, it's going to be able to chip this thing in particular down a lot, but as well as the Scizor, Meloetta, Coco if it's not boots, things like that. So next up, I'm going to go into my Seismitoad, and I'm just going to let to sack it off the Latios. I don't have a Draco pivot. I can't really go into my Clef because I die Psychic immediately after. Sorry. I'm going to softball up on the Coco, and I make a bit of a stupid play right here. I guess in my head, I was just hardwired to think like, Special Coco, Grass Knot, Dazzling Gleam, Thunderbolt, was coming because I could Calm Mind here, thinking I could set up in this thing's face and kind of wreak a little bit of havoc, but unfortunately, as you're going to see, Wild Charge comes out here, and that's just a raw 2-hit KO in my Clef as I try to go for a Calm Mind. Would have gotten a little bit more out of the turn if I went for a Moonblast, which is pretty free in retrospect, but not the biggest deal in the world. I am going to pivot on my Drampa. I could find another opportunity to get my Clef up potentially, as right here, Wild Charge and a U-turn comes out, showing it is obviously not going to be, what do you call it, choice anyway, but also the fact that it didn't take Spike showed that it was boots. As right here, he is going to U-turn out, do a lot of damage, but I am going to be able to go for a Flamethrower. I guess, like, in hindsight, Rooster's better. There's no way he's going hard into his Scizor on that thing, especially with the Spike. It just doesn't make sense. He doesn't know what set I am. He doesn't know what I'm going to go for there. Regardless, I go for a Roost right here, as Hurricane's going to miss, and then as it misses again, I am going to go for a Calm Mind. I'm going to kind of click Calm Mind for a little bit. I believe I have to get up to +4 in order to guarantee Oko this Moltres, and I just wanted to kill it when it wasn't in Berserk range. And if I get this boosted up, I prevent things from like Latios coming in and dealing with me from there. So I figured that was obviously pretty nice here, as I am going to Calm Mind just one more time, and then this next turn, I am going to go for a Hyper Voice, not get flinched, and knock out this Moltres right here, which is obviously nice. Next up is Scizor, and I guess I should have kind of maybe called that Superpower is coming out here, and then maybe, like, I don't know what I pivoted out into, though. Glade could have been a pivot, I suppose. Then I could have kept Drampa around for the Coco, as Coco kind of does me dirty right now. But I am going to stay in and take a mean Superpower. It's a very, probably fastish Superpower, too, to knock out my Drampa right here. I'm going to go into my Heatran, just throw off an Eruption. Wishy-Washy is only going to take, like, 17%, but that plus Spike has already taken off 30%, so it doesn't switch in all too longer, as a Flip Turn is going to come out into my Clefable, this Meloetta is going to come out here, and I'm not going to elect to save my Clefable. I'm actually going to sack it off as a Relic Song comes out, which isn't something I've seen in a Draft League game in a long time. I haven't seen Meloetta in general, so it was cool to see it put in some work right here. But I'm going to go into my Heatran because I know this thing isn't Scarf. It's not going to be Scarf in a Relic Song, and if it is, it's Scarf in a Relic Song. So, like, doesn't make much sense. And otherwise, I'm going to be able to force this thing out, or just knock it out with an Eruption altogether. If the Wishy-Washy wants to come in, it's basically another 30% chip on that thing. And then it switches in one more time, or just doesn't switch in without getting to a KO'd anymore. So I was completely fine with that thing coming in. He does end up just stacking off the Meloetta, though, which is great. Out comes Latios, and expecting like an Aura Sphere or a Surf or something like that. I'm going to pivot into my Glade, but I also know that I do take a Draco from full, just because Glade's really bulky on the Spadef side. If we do take that Draco very well, and I am going to throw off a knockoff here. Unfortunately, I don't go for like a fire punch, but I don't think I was in a position to do so. Especially because like there's a potential he always just stays in and takes that speed tie, and tries to win the tie. So I figured that knockoff really wasn't that bad of a play, especially maybe if you want to sack wishy-washy or something like that. I don't know. If I won the tie, I could have taken it as Ladio, so I wanted to punish that. Bullet punch is gonna come out next. That's fine though. I can go out into my heat trend now. Just click eruption. And again, it would have chipped on the wishy-washy if it wanted to come in, or it was going to 2-8 KO something else or Oko something else on this team. So Eruption was very strong there. I'm actually going to elect to stay in on an Eruption right here on this Latios, because if it's Aura Sphere, I kind of lose regardless. There's not really an out for me at this point. But if he's something like Draco and he wants a Draco to hit me, and he doesn't really have coverage otherwise, or he's like Surf or something like that, I at least want to find that out. Don't die to a Surf in full. And I can maybe pivot Grand or something like that, or maybe even sack this off to get some more damage. I don't know. It'd be tough, regardless, if he's Surf. But if he Draco's right here, expecting my Greninja to come in, or just Draco's in general, because it's his way of hitting me, 1, I'll live. 2, he's very chipped down. And 3, he has to recover in order to kill me, or in order to, you know, stay healthy. Or he can attack me, but I won't die to anything. Maybe Thunderbolt, but I didn't really calc that, and I wouldn't really think that a -2 Thunderbolt would be the click there. But right here, he is Draco. As I go Gren, and you're going to see a Roost does end up coming out here. Now, from this point, I feel as if my best play is Scald. Now, he realistically can stay in and sack this thing off, but in my head, I was thinking, okay, Wishy-Washy has one more switch into Eruption. If I somehow position in my Heatran again, where I can get off an Eruption or something like that, we'll be in a pretty good spot to just kind of win with that a little bit late game if he gives me this Latios, right? Or I just get off Earth Powers or something like that. So I guess I wouldn't be Eruption, though, because I've taken chips, so Flamethrower, but even then, you know what I mean. Earth Power is probably the most likely endgame at that point. And he's obviously at -2, so he doesn't do a lot of damage to me. So maybe he just sees that it's most inherently valuable to get into his Coco on a Dark Pulse and kind of seal the game with some Wild Charges from there. But I am going to elect to go into my go for a Scald here. I do get pretty lucky and get a crit here. I don't know if regular Scald into Shuriken killed. I didn't check that calc beforehand. But because of that crit and because of him going hard Coco, we're able to knock that thing out. And this is going to be very solid. Or it's going to put me in a, you know, position back where I could potentially come back in this game. Is Wishy-Washy is going to come in. It's going to get to 59 after the spike. I'm actually going to go into my Heatran, expecting a U-turn right here, as it would probably knock out my Grand, or at least bring me incredibly low. And then I can get into my Heatran and potentially go for a Boom on the Latios and knock that thing out, or punish the Wishy-Washy coming in on an expected Dark Pulse or something like that, and put myself in an okay spot. It would probably just be Latios staying in and getting snacked if he did go for a U-turn. But he does make a good play, goes for Liquidation, just raw knocks out my Wishy-Washy, unfortunately. And now we kind of have to play for some flinches. I am going to go for a Dark Pulse here on this Wishy-Washy. I do get the first one, and then next up I get another Dark Pulse, as he actually ends up going for Liquidation. So I'm not too sure as to why he didn't go for U-turn. Maybe U-turn just like didn't kill my Greninja. I don't know, to be completely honest. But since he went for that, and since we got off that Dark Pulse out and we got him to 25, he is in baby form now. We're going to be able to knock him out right here. And then Latios is going to come out, and we knock out the Latios, and Gren's able to clutch a game that we honestly God probably shouldn't have won. I guess he, like, he had to, like, if he didn't go Coco, he'd probably end up winning that game, but I don't know. Some people were calling it a choke, and to an extent, maybe it was, but I understand why he made the play. I don't know. It was a weird endgame. But regardless, Gren kind of sneaks us one by and sneaks us on to the next round of the tournament. So we'll see how we do there. Let's jump into that. Alrighty, guys. Next up, we have our game against Rai here. You can see he has a pretty scary team here in Victini, Barbarical, Mega Sceptile, which goes crazy, which we'll talk about here in a second. Landorus T against the Ground Resist Leafeon team, Mesprit, and Rotom Wash. You'd think I'd learn to, like, draft better grounds. This shit's happening in CTT2, where I drafted Ground Resist Appleton, and, like, I'm wondering why I'm getting smashed by all these ground types in prep. But we're playing Lando T here with Ground Resist Leafeon, which obviously isn't great. Victini can put in a lot of work versus my team, in particular Special Victini does a lot of work, has great coverage in on my squad. Then we have something like Barbarical, which is a huge threat at +2. Honestly, I really can't allow this thing to set up for free as it has great coverage against my team, whether it be Tough Claws, Liquidations, Stone Edges, Earthquakes, as well as Grass Knot for Seismitoad, which is something I really do expect, because it can just like go Seismitoad +2, which isn't good. Mega Sceptile is another Pokemon that's really terrifying for me to deal with. I don't expect like any like Subseed shenanigans. Like Sceptile does pretty well in a lot of other matchups just because we have Clef, but like Leaf Storm, Earthquake just hits everything. So like that's not fun. It can do a lot of work against us. Leaf Storm, Earthquake, like Dragon Pulse, or it could even be Focus Blast, and if he's feeling extra frisky and thinks he can get Force Chip on Heatran. Plus, I'm probably not going to use Heatran as my pivot into Sceptile, other than to take a Leaf Storm, because Earthquake rocks me, obviously. So, we have to be very careful about that. Landorus is Landorus against no ground resist. What else can I do? Don't switch into Earthquake. Then we have Mesprit, which is going to be an annoying pivot. It's probably going to be a Rocker. But it can spread T-Ways, knockoffs. It can check my Gallade very well with like Colbur or even Helmet, just to punish me for attacking. And Rotom is obviously very annoying for me to break. I don't have anything that immediately threatens Rotom, so gotta be very careful about that guy. Alrighty, let me show you my team real quick. We have a Mega Gallade here. We are just 4 attacks. Knockoff, Shadow Sneak, Close Combat, Ice Punch. Does very well. We're Ice Punch over Triple Axle because I really don't need Axle, and it just avoids potential helmets from things. Whereas Ice Punch gets me the KOs that I really need just from neutral, which is obviously great. And then our other Close Combat just hits everything else very hard, besides things like Mesprit. And Knockoff into Shadow Sneak is great for things like Victini, as well as Weakened Sceptile, as well as Weakened Landorus if it's like Rock Polish or Scarf, as well as just really anything weakened and low, which is great. And I didn't really see myself ever Swords Dancing, so I figured Shadow Sneak could come up clutch in some instances. Then we have a Specs Gren. There is no Dark Pulse resist on my opponent's team, so we're going to try and be clicking that as much as possible. If like Spidef Rotom comes, I have U-turn to pivot on that. I figured Spike was kind of a waste of momentum because one, they just Volt Switch out on me, or just Defog for free on me, if they are a Defogging Rotom variant. So I don't really want that to happen. So I didn't figure Spikes were super valuable. Also, there's 3 things off the ground on this team in particular, plus the Victini might be Boots. So again, there's really no reason for me to be like, you know, Spikes on my Gren, because they're just pretty bad here. Then we have a pretty darn Spadef, Heatran, Magnustorm, Earth Power, Toxic Protect. We're modest, but pretty darn Spadef. It was just for like EV optimization. We need to hit 299, but if we went modest, we got more EVs out of our special attack. So it's just like optimization thing, because you're supposed to go boosting in the high stat if you can hit the number and the other stat without going boosting. So if that's a good way of understanding that. I know a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. I didn't know that until like a year or 2 ago. Like I didn't know how to officially efficiently EV my shit. And I could be butchering that explanation, but you know, who knows. But does very well. It's very annoying. It's a good teeny check. It's a good Mesprit check. It's just a big nuisance. Magnustorm plus Toxic and Protect is going to be really annoying for a lot of his team, which is great. And then Earth Power hits things like Barbarical, Victini very hard. And then Magnustorm really hits everything else besides Rotom, but Rotom we can't really hit anyways. Then we have a pretty standard Clef here where Moonblast, Knockoff, Stealth Rock, and Soft Build. If we can knock off common pivots like Victini and get rid of its Boots, get rid of its Band, its Scarf, its Specs, its Expert Belt, Life Orb, whatever it might be, it's really going to help us out. That, as well as in conjunction with Stealth Rock, really chipping this team down over time, putting in a range of Gren and Gallade, really helps us out. Then we have a Seismitoad with Chesto Berry, where just stabs, Toxic, Rest, pretty darn Fizdef in order to take hits from the Landorus a little bit better, as well as, you know, a non-Grass Knot Barbarical, but I do think that's going to be the case. And like a physical Victini. I did want to cover that at the very least if I could. Then lastly, we have a Chople Berry Drampa, which is going to be our lead. We're Glare, Draco, Roost, Flamethrower. Glare is very free against this team. I don't expect that the Rotom is going to be the initial pivot into our Drampa, so I want to make sure that we can kind of paralyze thing off rip. I believe we're Chople Berry in case it's like lead superpower Landorus. Now, I don't think it'll be superpower, but it could. It really doesn't need any more besides Earthquake and U-turn. So I just want to make sure that I guaranteed live a hit from the Landorus so that I can Glare it if it does end up being lead. But yeah, that's going to be the team. Let's go ahead and jump into the battle itself. I am going to lead off with my Drampa, as I said before. Andy Landorus is going to lead. I'm just going to throw off a Glare. I don't expect the Rotom to be the pivot. As it isn't, we're going to be able to go ahead and throw off this Glare and Paralyze Landorus, which is huge for our team that doesn't have a ground resist right now. I'm going to go for a Draco and Mr. Rotom, which is unfortunate because I stay in the next turn just to get information off. And 50% is obviously great. I would have probably pivoted out into my Seismitoad the next turn, as he would have either had a Pain Split or Toxic there. Unfortunately, he's going to kind of get the best of both worlds, but it's really not that big of a deal. Nothing we can't come back from. I'm going to go for a Toxic right here as a Sceptile comes hard in. This is a good offensive switch by Rai, obviously. really being able to initially pressure my Size Toad, especially because I wasn't clicking an Ice move ever there. And I'm able to catch the thing with the Toxic though, and if it is like some weird Sub-Seed shenanigans, we're able to chip it down over time, or just in general able to chip it down in range of a priority Shadow Sneak or something like that. It does go for a Leaf Storm, but I am able to the second one. But I actually elect to go for Rocks instead, because I don't expect him to stay in and sack this thing off, and I think that there are other opportunities in which I can get a Soft Boiled up on things like Rotom, Mesprit, things like that. Provided they aren't choiced, and deal with it from there. And now that I have the Sceptile Poison, that plus Rocks is really going to chip it down over the course of the game, so I don't think I need my Clef as much. Again, I can pivot around, get that thing to -2 on a Leaf Storm, and then come in even Soft Wheel on it. So, Landers is going to come hard in, as Seismitoad is going to be next. I am just going to go for Rest in this thing's face, knowing that I'm faster because of the Paralyzation, and then it's going to go for another EQ. I think go for a Scald, and this thing is very bulky, only taking 41 for that Scald, which is pretty funny. And it's going to go ahead and get a slow U-turn out, go into Victini, and the Energy Ball is pretty darn telegraphed right here, so I am going to go hard out into my Drampa, take that decently well, and just off a Draco Meteor, because there is no Draco resist on this team. Unfortunately, he does reveal to be a sub-Victini. The good thing, though, is that I am able to break this next sub, which is really important because he's going to be forced to sub again, which is fine, and then I'll go down to Toxic plus the next hit after that. But even though he's behind a sub, I do have my Greninja with that Water Shuriken. Provided I get 3 hits, I will be able to knock out this Victini, which we do end up gaining. We're going to knock it out and then, put ourselves in a good spot. Next up, I am going to go out into my Seismitoad on this Rotom, as it does end up going for a Toxic and catching me there, which is obviously pretty unfortunate. I'm going to go for Rest, and this is a big fuck up by me. I shouldn't have ever gone for a Rest right here. I did not need Seismitoad healthy. I didn't need to keep it around. If anything, I could have just gone for a Toxic and then Scald the Landers the next turn. Just Scald them in general. There was no reason for me to go for this Rest, because what it's going to do is it's going to allow this Barbaracle in, which is going to allow a Free Shell Smash in what should be the game right here, right? There's not really an out right here. He's going to reveal the White Herb right there, unfortunately. And I'm going to make the pivot into my Seismitoad, because I feel as if my only out right here, right, is going to be him Shell Smashing again, and me getting 5 hits with my Greninja, or getting enough to get off enough damage to where my Gallade can come in and Shadow Sneak. And that's if he smashes again, knowing that I still have another turn of sleep to take advantage of me. Luckily, he does end up smashing again, though. I did talk to him after. It wasn't because he was trying to take advantage of Toad or something like that and getting greedy. It was more so because of the fact that he thought I was trying to pivot. He tried on a Grass Knot and then get a Flame Body proc, which definitely makes sense. I was Flash Fire, though, because of Victini, and I didn't have a great Victini matchup otherwise, so I did not have Flame Body. I am going to go down here, go into my Grinding. We're going to kind of hope for the best right here. You're going to see we're going to get 1, 2, 3, and a crit. Now, with the 4 hits, we would have been able to pick him off with the Shadow Sneak, and we could have potentially gotten 5, I suppose. But obviously, that was pretty darn lucky on my end. But I'll take it. I wouldn't have immediately lost right there because he smashed that second time, but I would have lost my Gren, which would have made this endgame play out way differently, as you're going to see here soon. Now, I'm going to go Heatran on the Sceptile come in. He makes a very good play in going for Earthquake. No, I can't really go Clef there. I suppose I could have sacked it off, but really that's fine. I don't really need my Heatran for anything. It doesn't check anything inherently anymore besides the Mesprit, and I have other ways of beating down the Mesprit in my opinion. So I am going to go for 2 Protects in a row, as I actually end up getting them, really chipping down the Sceptile more and more throughout the course of this, as it is going to take another Earthquake and take me out. I could have protected again, but I wasn't getting it. Then we're going to go Gallade. I'm going to Shadow Sneak to try and pick this thing off. He actually goes hard Mesprit, which is very, very solid for me, because we see that it's not Helmet, it's not Leftover, showing that it's probably Culver Berry, but we're able to get off a good 23% with that Shadow Sneak and really, really chip it down in order to hopefully put in range of a knockoff later, because if we do, we just win with our Gallade a little bit later on. The Thunder Wave is going to come out, which I did expect since the no hard Gren. And then Clefable is I'm gonna try and soft boil up this next turn on the U-turn. Unfortunately, we get fully paired, and the Landorus is gonna go for an explosion the next turn. There wasn't really much I could guard against the Landorus in general. Like, it could have Earthquake spammed even until I got paired, I guess. But he would also be playing with pairs, so Boom made sense because it netted him a KO guaranteed. Like, everything died on my team. So this next turn, I'm going to go into Greninja. It puts me in the best position possible. Sceptile's going to come out and sack on the double down, just kind of see what I want to go into, so he can grab momentum in his favor. But really, that's fine, because if he goes into the Mesprit, he pops his Culver with the Dark Pulse. 1, I can flinch him. And 2, it just puts him in range of my Gallade the turn after. If he goes Rotom, I could again go for a Dark Pulse, get a flinch potentially. While I don't Oko here, I do 2-hit KO. And if I get a flinch, I just win the game with Greninja into Gallade. And if not, I 1, put this thing in range, and 2, if it Volt Switches out, then I'm able to go into my Gallade and try and 1v1 with some fortunate luck, which we'll see here in a second, because he is going to stay in. I'm going to Dark Pulse, not get the flinch, unfortunately, as he does Volt Switch out right here, and go into the Mesprit. Again, more Rock Chip, which is always welcome. I'm going to go into my Glade, and despite this thing being Colbert and being a check to me, it doesn't really have any Oko power against me. If he wants to go for a Dazzling Gleam right here, I would just knock him out with 2 knockoffs in a row, and I would live that hit. If you want to go for a Thunder Wave here, he can obviously Thunder Wave me into, into attacking me afterwards, and hoping I get parried or something like that. And I can still avoid parries, obviously, which is kind of my out, or I can avoid that Thunder Wave and just win the game like that, because Rotom obviously is in range and close combat where it's at. He is going to hit the Thunder Wave, but thankfully, I do go for a Shadow Sneak, get a little bit higher of a roll, and knock out the Mesprit. Last up is Rotom. We just have to not get parried, and we don't, and we knock out the Rotom and win a pretty close game. Again, another game where I definitely debatably got pretty lucky with my Greninja interaction there at the end. Now, obviously, I didn't automatically lose to that Barbarical, but the endgame would have played out very differently. So I'm not going to say whether or not I guaranteed lost from there or guaranteed won. I think I would have played differently, and I think he would have played differently. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me kind of coping and making my win sound a little bit better. But regardless, we're able to win this game against Rai and another Nail Biter and kind of sneak our way all through forward. And again, we're punching up in a game like this. Rai has a much more accomplished draft league career than I do up to this point, so he's a very solid player. So sneaking a game from him, even if it does require a little bit of luck, is, always good for the ego. So yeah, that being said, let's jump into the next one. Alrighty, next up we have our game against Toxic here. Another very solid player, another very scary team. Regen plus Switch, Torn T, Glow King, Hydra, Mega Steelix, Primarina, Kartana, and did I say Mega Steelix? I think I said all of the Pokemon. Hydreigon, maybe I didn't say Hydra, but it's on the screen, obviously. He's got 3 big heads there. This is a very scary matchup, obviously. Kartana can be incredibly terrifying, whether it be Scarf or speed boosting Sword Stance, can get out of hand pretty quick, honestly. So that's something to keep in mind. Torn is something I really struggle to deal with long term, whether just like knocking, U-turning, and hurricaning. It's something I really do struggle with over the course of the game. Glow King is Glow King, and it's always hard to kill. In particular, my team, it's pretty hard to kill. Hydreigon, I do have Clefairy, which is nice. Primarina is something I do not switch into whatsoever, no matter what I do. I have ways around the other threats, I think, but Prim, between the stabs plus potential Energy Ball, it really just kind of just nuke my whole shit. So you have to be very careful of Specs, Calm Mind, maybe even AV, Kebia for Gren, who knows what it might be. So you gotta be very, very careful about that. And then we have the Mega Steelix, which I think I deal with pretty well between Seismitoad switching in and then having Heatran, Seismitoad, Gallade, and Gren being able to hit it very hard, which is obviously nice. Now, I can show you my team really quick for this one. We have a pretty interesting squad. We have an AV... Ooh. Don't want to look at the smoke on analysis. We have an AV Heatran here with Lava Plume, Earth Power, Dragon Pulse, and Overheat. Now, AV seems pretty weird, but my mode of thinking is I think his Torn is going to knock me off regardless. And if he isn't a knockoff Torn, he's some nasty plot variant. I really feel like I need this AV and this added bulk to really deal with that thing well. I have rocks, I believe, on my Seismitoad. Yeah, I have rocks on my Seismitoad, so I didn't need rocks. And the coverage is honestly nice, and we're Lava Plume plus Overheat, which seems interesting. But the way I kind of envision it is if all things go according to plan and things go well, if we see like a lead Torn, and it wants to lead and wants to taunt us to keep us from getting up our rocks, or toxicking him, or whatever it may be, he might taunt as I go and throw off a Lava Plume, and he'll see that I don't 2-hit KO him with Lava Plume. I shouldn't 2-hit KO him with Lava Plume. If so, then I probably go home with Overheat or some shit. And he's really offensive. So he might be more inclined to stay in, knock off, maybe try and get rid of my lefties, because a Heatran without leftovers is barely a Heatran at all, right? So if he wants to go ahead and knock me off there, I can knock him out with Overheat on the subsequent turn. Plus, Overheat's just a nuke into things like Mega Steelix. It's a nuke. It just does a lot of damage in general to a lot of things coming in. It really punishes a lot of his switches, especially after I spread burns with Lava Plume. I'm actually curious. With 140, let me see, Heatran, 124, Modest, Overheat. Do Go Mega Steelix. We should always knock that out, which with Lava Plume we did not. Yes, with Overheat we always knock that out, which is nice to have an Oko on that because Lava Pluming and just missing out on a KO just to die would really blow. So that's obviously pretty darn cool. Then we have a pretty Fizz-Def Leafeon with Leaf Blade, Knockoff, Synthesis, and Charm. I really wanted Wish, but I felt like I needed every single slot on this thing. I needed Synthesis for immediate, reliable recovery. I wanted the Leaf Blade for stab, so I'm not walled by Primarina, as it might be a pivot into that on Scalds or Surfs or whatever it may be. I want to knock off to be able to take items from things like Hydreigon, Slowking. I want a way to... It also consistently damages the card. Not a lot, but it consistently damages it in that plus Rocky Helmet. Should be nice. And then we needed Charm so we didn't get bullied down by a Swords Dancing card. And we could always lower that thing's attack by 2, which is really, really important. So we're not set up fodder for it. But this is going to be our main card check. It also checks things like Steelix very well. Obviously, non-toxic Steelix, I suppose. And since that will really chip it down with Helmet plus Leaf Blade and things like that. We'll beat it 1v1 unless it's toxic. So, yeah, that's going to be Leafeon here. Then we have a Calm Mind Clef here with Moonblast, Flamethrower, Calm Mind, and Soft Boiled. Now, I know this seems a little bit weird in a Glow King matchup, but honestly, if it's not AV, we can break through it pretty quick. And if it is AV, plus 6, Flamethrower has a good chance to KO it. And he kind of has to crit through us at that point. Now, obviously, he can. It takes us a while to get up to that point. But it does really well outside of this too. If we can eliminate the Glow King, Moonblast plus Flamethrower just kind of rocks his team once we start getting boosted up. So I think Calm Mind Clef is worth, even though there is a Glow King here. Next up, we have a Seismitoad. We're Scald, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, Toxic. Pretty simple stuff. We're here to get up rocks, pivot into Steelix very well, and spread some stats with Scalds and Toxics. More Earthquake just because it hits something like Glow King harder if it is in the Solvus variant. Then we have a Swords Dance, very bulky Gallade with Close Combat, Triple Axle, Earthquake, Swords Dance. This is so we can kind of take a hit from Torn, as well as not die to a foul play once we get it to +2 attack from the Slowking Galar, as I do envision that to potentially be a setup target for our Mega Gallade here. And then realistically, Close Combat, Triple Axle, Earthquake, Swords Dance. It's just about everything. Excuse me. Sorry, it's late. It hits just about everything besides the Prim, but I do envision that we will be able to get some chip on Prim. And then we have a solid breaker here in Greninja with Night Slash, Ice Beam, Surf, and Gunk Shot. Pretty physically offensive, but we do have some special attack investment. Does really well, has perfect coverage for this team. Ice Beam for Torn, Ice Beam for Cart, Night Slash for Slowking, Ice Beam for Hydra, Gunk Shot for Prim, and Surf for the Steelix. Okay, imagine if we had Protean. This thing would just 6-0 immediately, right? Alrighty, let's go ahead and jump into the game itself. Like I said before, we are going to be leading off with our Heatran, as I do want to try and lure in, or bait this Torn into staying, as it does taunt like we envisioned turn 1. Do get off a Lava Flame. I'm going to throw off an Overheat, hoping a knockoff comes out. Unfortunately, it doesn't. We are going to see a U-turn. But this Overheat does reveal that this Prim is leftovers, and does get me some decent chip on it. So, really, that lead scenario wasn't all that bad for me. I am going to go Seismitoad as I don't expect an Energy Ball, as the Torn's going to double back in. I'm going to go for Rocks his turn. Now, I know Taunt kind of made sense from his end to stop me from getting up my own Rocks, but I didn't really lose much from clicking Stealth Rock, because if he taunted, he was just going to knock or U-turn the next turn anyways, and it kind of punishes... Sorry, y'all. Kind of punishes him being over-aggressive and going for a knock, or U-turning for momentum, or whatever it may be, as I do get up the Rocks right there. And now... we're going to get out into that Heatran. We're going to take this knockoff right here. It does crit us, but thankfully get a little bit of justice in getting this burn here. Weakening those knocks and those U-turns, which is nice, as well as getting residual chip on this thing over the course of the game. And we get a crit from Lava Plume, which is nice. Prim's going to come out. I could have Earth Powered in a prediction to do the most damage possible, or maybe even Overheated. But I figured Lava Plume was best because it beat to burn on something, and if I could burn things and chip them down, I'm going to be in a better spot. Unfortunately, we don't get it, and this Prim's going to be able to heal up above 50. I do go into Leafeon expecting a water move right here, and I think I go for a knockoff, thinking maybe the Torn would come in or the Glow King, but he makes a good play in pivoting Steelix, knowing that, 1, Leaf Blade really just doesn't do anything to it because I am a Leafeon, and 2, that I'm probably going for a knockoff on that instance, as he's going to be able to get some pretty free rocks here as they go into my Toad. I Toxic here, which is a pretty big misplay in my opinion. Just because the Torn pivot definitely made sense, and even if he goes into something like Hydra, getting the burn off would be great, and if not, I can potentially go off a Toxic, or just have a pretty free Clef right there. So the Hydra pivot wasn't that big of a deal, and Scalding there would have obviously been to burn on something else potentially. I guess Prim could have come in as well, but again, Scald burn on that is great because it negates leftovers still, so I didn't need a Toxic there. Unfortunately, it's just going to allow Torn to get even more health back when it switches out. It is going to Hurricane hit as well as confuse me, unfortunately. It is going to U-turn out this turn. I believe I just went for a Lava Plume trying to bait a burn again on the Prim. Fortunately, we're going to hit ourselves, and at this point, I don't really need the Heat Tram. With Rocks up and no removal, I don't really have a way of getting it healthy again. I'm not Wish on Leafeon or Clef, so I get off some Earth Power Chip and then go down to the Surf right here, as Leafeon is going to come out this next turn. Steelix is going to come in. I am just going to Leaf Blade this time, as he does go to Steelix again. I get a crit and only do 22. By the way, I really want to try Mega Steelix. It looks like a really fun Pokemon, and it's something I just haven't tried in draft yet. So maybe in my next Nadex League, I'll try and pick it up, because this thing's an absolute demon. I'm going to go into Seismitoad here on a Heavy Slam. Fortunately, I'm not Helmet, or I have my item locked anyways, but I'm just going to go for a Scald this next turn, and luckily get a Burn, and really be able to weaken this Earthquake coming out here, as he does switch out this next turn. Again, I just go for a Scald, only doing 21 to Torn, which this thing is so bulky, as it does crit a Hurricane, which crit obviously didn't matter, and we're going to go down with our Toad here. This next turn, I am just going to go for a big Ice Beam, as he does make a good calculated sack and getting rid of the Steelix, or I go for a Surf. I probably should have gone for an Ice Beam. I guess Surf did more to a Glow King pivot. That's right here. Card comes out, and you're going to see that does 42. And I need to run this calc, right? Because I never actually asked him, and I presume, looking at that damage, not 42, 40, that he had to be Assault Vest and pretty darn invested. Because if you look at 40 special attack Ice Beam to a regular Kartana, that does 82 min. So he was like Assault Vest, and not only Assault Vest, not only max HP, we did 42. So that's less than min roll. So he had to be pretty darn invested Assault Vest, which is definitely very interesting. Unfortunately, that means our Gren's just gonna die right here. I wanted to punish him going for like a Swords Dance or something like that and being speed boosting. Maybe I could have made that Leafeon pivot, but I did get 2 KO by Leaf Blade and Smart Strike, or just Smart Strike in general. I also could have potentially sacked Clef, but then I felt really iffy about beating a Scarf Hydra. Scarf Hydra just kind of beat me at that point either, so I kind of went for the attack, hoping I would get the KO, and it didn't end up being close. That's right here. Leafeon's going to come out. I believe I just synth up right here as he does take Helmet. He's not going to be able to knock me out with this Smart Strike, which is nice. And then I'm going to synth up one more time on the Torn coming in. I believe I now go into my Clefable, as I can take Hurricanes pretty darn well. Only 30%, and then I'm going to get some of that back via my leftovers. This next turn, I believe I am just going to throw off a Moonblast expecting a taunt. Fortunately, Torn is just ridiculously bulky, man, and it's going to take absolutely nothing. Even after burn, it wasn't in range of another Moonblast. Regardless, though, he is going to go ahead and U-turn out, go into the Glow King, and this turn, I'm not going to be able to stay in on this thing. I need my Clef to win. I'm going to elect to sack off my Leafeon, because at the very least, I know that this Kartana isn't Scarf, which means that my Gallade can beat it. Next up, I am going to go bow into Gallade, though, and my win con is him kind of choking and letting me set up for free, maybe going cart, maybe sacking off the Prim right here, because if I get up an SD and he like misses a Hurricane, I do just like raw win the game. So that would obviously be amazing for me. It'd be phenomenal, but he is going to make the correct play and just go for a foul play here, and what this is going to ensure is that I can't live Scarf hits, I can't live Hurricane, obviously, now that I'm not full anymore, but really it's a Scarf Hydra that's going to be able to come in and just revenge me. Now, maybe I should have just pivoted out there, as that was pretty darn obvious, but at this point, I didn't feel super confident myself being able to win this game. As Kartana's going to come in, he makes a good aggressive switch here. I'm going to Calm Mind up, trying to get a Calm Mind up before the Torn came in, but realistically, Torn plus G-King should always beat me with Taunt and just Sludge Bombs from G-King. Regardless, we're going to be able to bring the diff down a little bit lower, as we did lift that Smart Strike, as he probably wasn't even max attack. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and drop here to the Scarf Hydra. Now, if we for some reason lived that and got a soft boil off, maybe we took another diff point. But I don't think we won, because again, we just wouldn't get up enough Calm Minds to beat G-King plus Torn. But yeah, that's gonna be the game. It was definitely a really fun tournament. I definitely, like I said, I played a lot of players who were a lot better than me, so I got to play some really solid competition. Now, I did definitely kind of cheese my way to a couple wins. But regardless, I'm very proud of how I played and, you know, the wins that I ended up getting, because I know not a lot of people expected me to win any of those games. So being able to was obviously a really nice thing. And it was a lot of fun. I liked both of my teams. Let me know what you guys thought of this tournament run. I'm going to be uploading my PGP run next, which in which I played for SBT, which we've uploaded SBT movies and league battles, stuff like that a bunch. And PGP, for those of you who don't know, is a team tour where it's basically like one giant league war. Leagues like have a roster of like, you know, X amount of players, and they pick their drafts, and then you do like a team tour kind of aspect of it. I've played all 4 seasons for 4 different teams. This season was season 4 where I played for SBT, but season 1 I played for NCP and we won, and that's when it was a Gen 7 Wi-Fi tournament. That was a lot of fun. Season 2 I played for APA. Season 3 I played for BBL on this. Again, this season SVT. So season 5, if you're running a team and you end up seeing this video for some reason, let me know if I've played in that league, because I wanna play on your team. I think that'd be fun. I wanna keep the streak up of being the town whore of PGP and playing for every different team humanly possible. But I had a really good run, and I really enjoyed my team. And I think I had some really fun games from that. So that'll be the next like movie upload. I don't know if I have any other big movies planned other than that, though. We're kind of winding down for the generation. So if I end up playing in any more tournaments or leagues finishing that I think are worth uploading, I obviously will. I need to catch up on LC. Don't worry, those are still going up. And yeah, let me know what you guys enjoyed about this movie. What was your favorite battle? Yada, yada, yada. That being said, see you guys in the next one. Later.